I like to think of myself as someone who has been desensitized to a lot of horror stuff because of what I usually cover on this channel. That's not a good thing, but I feel it's true. When I read Cows for the first time, I thought it wasn't going to get much worse than that. That book was truly vile, so nothing has grossed me out heavily or disturbed me to my core since I reviewed that, and it subsequently got taken down by the author. But while looking for movies to do a review on for this channel this week, I think I found something that grossed me out so bad that I had to take a bath after. Now, I am no stranger to disgusting horror films. I have seen both a Serbian film and 100 Days of Sodom, both of which are pretty bad, and we've covered some other really disturbing movies on this channel. And this movie is gross in a very different way. It is extreme body horror in this movie. The past few days, I've been looking through some more unknown movies to do a review on, foreign or not. Like usual, I watched two that I liked, but I didn't feel they were as dark or as disturbing as I wanted. I watched The Strange Little Cat, a German fever dream of a film, and although it was really confusing and unsettling, it didn't scratch that itch. Then I watched The Reflective Skin, which was a genuinely good film, but it was very bright and the last scene was so over the top that it kinda killed it for me. Then I stumbled upon Eric Fallardau's Thanatamorphose, a Canadian indie horror film which pretty much means morphing into death, or in other words, rotting, is what the title means, which is what the movie is pretty much about. A young woman rotting. This movie has viscerally real special effects, and at points I even felt nauseated from it. This movie has a pretty good message too, and the movie itself is very hard to sit through, which is a compliment. I have never seen a movie so vile and disgusting. I think it truly holds the title for the most disturbing movie for me, and today we're going to cover it on my channel. And obviously, watch the movie yourself first if you have a strong stomach, as I'm going to have to censor a lot due to nudity being pretty heavily ingrained in this movie. So if you're ready to sit through this absolutely dreadfully good horror movie for this week's Extreme Movie Night, let's get into Thanatamorphose by Eric Fallardau. The movie opens up with some indistinguishable body parts with a blurry filter over it. Loud booms ring out and it gives a very disorienting feeling. Then someone's back. Then her face moving up and down, back and forth. Then moaning. I would assume this is a highly art house interpretation of sex. Which is great for me because I don't have to censor anything. Then we get the title, Thanatamorphose, in a fabric looking background with chicken scratch text. Then something unique, a title for the first act of the film. All three acts have a title, which is cool, as it gives you time to get popcorn, even though if you eat popcorn while watching this movie, there is something wrong with you. The act starts with a naked woman walking out of a room and sitting down and peeing. She scratches her neck and another man walks in the room. When the woman stands to wash her hands, you'll notice she has very noticeable and unique tattoos. She looks at herself in the mirror and notices she has a few bruises. Weird. Her partner goes to the fridge and grabs some milk and drinks it, and then he spits it out and throws it out. It's rotten. He drinks some water instead as the woman walks in as well and watches him. She asks, "Are you sleeping here tonight?" And he quickly replies, "Nope." We hear him walk away and pee in the other room, but then he walks out of the bathroom naked as he steps on a nail. Not the pointy bit, but the end of it. He stumbles to the ground and curses. He chastises the woman and asks, "Why didn't she clean this? Didn't she look at this place even before renting it?" The woman looks at it and says, "It doesn't look like he's going to need stitches or anything, but she's going to get him cleaned up." She gets him up, and he leaves a pool of blood as they go to the bathroom. He says it hurts like fucking hell. And then she pulls out some hydrogen peroxide to clean it. She grabs it and drops it before she can get some on him, and she's saying, "Damn it, her fucking cramps are getting to her." When she drops the bottle, we see blood pooling on the floor from his foot wound. I would take him to the hospital at this point, but that's just me. She pours the hydrogen peroxide on his foot and cleans it with the rag and wraps it in some gauze. After which he hops away with his full penis on display and starts to get dressed. She walks into the room too, and as she does, at the same time she looks in the mirror and looks at herself and fixes her hair. She cracks her neck, which is something she does a lot in this film, and the man grabs his keys and starts to head out. They kiss goodbye and he leaves, leaving our lady alone. But as he leaves, she notices more bruises are starting to appear on her. Why is that happening? She goes to that nail and rips it out with the hammer and cleans up the blood from the floor and the walls. She then goes into a room and looks at something that we don't quite see. It's covered in a plastic bag. She takes it out of the room and drags something in the room with it and plugs it in, and she sits down near it. She stares at it and then puts the object wrapped in plastic on it. She unwraps it and we see it appears to be a sculpture of some sort, made of clay. It looks a bit like someone's head. She looks at it for a bit and fiddles with it. She sculpts it very slightly and shakes her head. Disappointed, frustrated, burned out. She pulls her hair back and a clump of it comes out. She must be really stressed. Then, almost as fast as she takes the sculpture out, the sculptress puts the sculpture back, unmotivated. She cleans up the room and does mundane tasks around the room and not really doing anything in particular. Perhaps just trying to find motivation or just doing something to do something. She goes to the kitchen and then does the same thing, just going through the motions, just existing. She then goes to the bathroom once again and does the same thing. Then she brushes her hair, combs her teeth. The whole time a sad violin plays in the background, giving this little segment a feeling of extreme monotony and melancholy. She goes to bed that night, not really having done anything. She's unable to sleep and tosses and turns. Yeah, I can relate. I haven't been able to sleep at all recently. She stares at the ceiling to see a slightly vaginal-looking shaped crack in the ceiling. She notices that it looks like that too, because right after she sees this crack, she starts touching herself. She does so with no music or anything in the background. The self-love here is not beautiful or even erotic. It seems she's just doing it to feel something. Anything. She wakes up the next morning and scratches near her crotch, and we see it's really red and sore, like a rash has formed. She looks at the ceiling and the crack now seems to be shut, not open like last night. It changed. How weird. She cracks her neck once again and sits on the bed for a while, just staring at the ceiling, the light streaming through her curtains, just for an alarm to interrupt. She takes a shower and rubs part of herself and seems to be in slight discomfort doing so. Her face now has a noticeable bruise. She drops the soap and goes to pick it up, only for her whole nail to crack off as she hits it on the soap. Ouch. She then grabs it again and another nail pops right off too. A bloody mess. She grabs them and gets out of the shower, rightfully freaked out a bit, and she washes her hands and tries to pop the nails back on, as if that would work. She then grabs some bandages and wraps her now nailless fingers in them. She pops an Advil and looks into the camera. She scratches that rash again and then shaves her eyebrows and her armpits. She combs her hair and puts on makeup, especially on that bruise on her face. She gets dressed and goes to the kitchen to make some eggs and bacon. I'm writing this part of the script early in the morning, and this shit looks so tasty. She pours coffee and starts eating her breakfast, monotonous as ever. We can see very noticeable dark bruises all over her body now as well. She gets dressed in extremely white clothes, very pure looking. She cracks her knuckles and checks to see if her makeup is covering that bruise in the mirror, and she grabs her stuff and leaves the house, going to work or somewhere. A noticeable amount of time later, she gets back home and enters. She looks over her mail and tosses it aside. Boring stuff, as usual for our sculptress. Although she notices a piece of mail that looks important and she opens it up. She starts reading it out loud, and it would appear she got an official rejection letter for her sculpture not getting in a gallery or something like that. She doesn't even finish it. She reads about a sentence and then just crumples it up after she realizes she's been rejected. She goes to the bathroom and combs her hair and uses the restroom when the doorbell rings. She calls out she's coming, but it rings over and over. She keeps screaming that she's coming, hold on. Weirdly, we never see who this is ringing the door, and it's never mentioned again. If you have any ideas, if you've seen this movie, let me know, because I have no clue what this was about. It then cuts to a small get-together or party amongst friends or something. The man talks about how his dog passed away recently. How sad. The sculptress's boyfriend says it was only a fucking dog, who cares? One woman in the group playfully smacks him, and the guy says, well, maybe it was just a fucking dog, but it was his dog, his family. The sculptress bites her nails, and her boyfriend gets up and knocks over a glass of wine. Everyone is kind of frustrated and gets up, and the boyfriend doesn't even attempt to clean it, making everyone else do it. Some of her friends look in the corner to the sculpture that the sculptress has been working on. One of her friends asks, are you going to finish that soon? She says she doesn't know. It's been off and on. Her boyfriend says, yeah, she's been saying that for the past year. She's never going to finish it. Okay, her boyfriend's an asshole. Noted. They then ask if she's heard from the gallery about getting something in it, and she lies and says, no, she hasn't heard anything back from them yet. Her friends ask, well, can they see the sculpture? And she says no. And they ask, why not? To which her boyfriend speaks over her and replies very loudly, it's because it's nothing interesting, it's stupid, it's dumb. The sculptress fake laughs and says, no, it's actually because it's just not ready yet. Boyfriend says she just wants people to insist so that he shows them, to which she grabs his leg and gives him a dirty look. One of the friends asks, how did she get that bruise on her neck? And she says, oh, she actually doesn't know. It was on her face when she woke up. She covered it with makeup, but it's still there. The boyfriend gets up and says it's actually because he wasn't at his best when he hit her. A very tasteless joke. She shakes her head and just says she's gonna just go get more wine in the kitchen. One of her male friends gets up and follows her. Noticeably not her boyfriend, by the way. He goes over to her and asks, why is she even still with that fucking asshole? She tries to pull a cork from another bottle of wine and accidentally corkscrews her own finger. Her friend opens it for her. Then the friend says her boyfriend's vulgar and oaf. Why is she with him? He then sort of sniffs her hair and rubs up against her. He grabs her hand and licks the blood off of it. She sort of says just stop, but half-heartedly. But she then grabs his thigh, not really stopping him, but groping around him as well. She stops the weirdness though and walks out of the frame, the friend smiling smugly as she does. They all just sort of sit there afterwards until a knock on the door rings out. The sculptress says she's not expecting anyone else, but she opens the door to see the landlord, who says she told her no parties after a certain time, and this certainly looks like a party now, doesn't it? It's late and he has work in the morning. He guesses the party's over now, and he turns off the music. He stares at them as they all start to walk away, and everyone starts to clean up and leave. The guy who was feeling her up leaves and sort of kisses her on the cheek, but not in like the friendly European way, but in like a weird way. As they clean up, the boyfriend says if he ever sees that douchebag near her again, he'll smash his fucking head in. She says he's drunk, leave her alone. He grabs her and tells her that she feels weirdly cold. She gets away from him and he grabs her harder and she slaps him, and then he slaps her back hard enough for her to fall down. He then raises her hand and starts kissing her, forcing himself upon her. She pushes him away, but he grabs her face. Her lips are now all cut up where he was kissing her. He slaps her ass as she is looking in the mirror. He says, come on, he didn't do anything that bad to her. Yet. He starts kissing her again as she's looking at her face in the mirror, which is cut up. And she kisses him back, and they undress each other, and then they have sex. As she sits there, apathetically. He tells her again that she's cold, and she says, yeah, she is. Maybe it's because he can't make her feel anything anymore. Maybe someone else could do it better, she says smugly. He stares at her and then begins thrusting. We then get that feverish motion blur again like in the beginning of the movie as they go at it, her eyes glazing over. The two then sit in bed together. The sculptress voices her feelings of everything being pointless. Her boyfriend asks, what's pointless? She says, sculpting. She's tired of everyone finding it shitty or useless. No one cares about her art anyway. Her boyfriend says, yeah, right. Come to his job one day, a real job, and she'll see what not caring really means. Sculptor says she can't feel it. It's useless. She has no urge to do it anymore. This obviously is implying several things. She's talking about sex, her art, the world, everything. But we'll get more into that in the analysis. The sculptress gets up and walks over to her sculpture, nakedly. Great, I have to censor this too. She just stares at it. She then takes it away and puts it somewhere, perhaps in the trash. She cleans out everything near her creative space. Her boyfriend gets up and says, what are you doing? It's 3 a.m. She ignores him and chews her nails, or what's left of them. They go back to bed and he snores extremely loudly next to her. She cannot sleep. She gets up then and appears to be in great pain. She leans over on her boyfriend and vomits on him. Great. She walks out of the bedroom and stumbles through the house, appearing to be in great pain. She goes to the bathroom and sits down in the toilet and is hunched over in excruciating pain. Her breathing is labored. She gets up and falls to the floor, passed out. Her boyfriend runs in to check on her, and we see in the toilet she was pissing blood. We then get a really intense scene of a close-up of an animal carcass. I won't show it because I don't know if it's real or not, and I'm not taking chances with YouTube, but it's like extremely grotesque. Maggots line the rotting body of what looks like a dog. Intense, loud scratching noises play in the background with a light that it cuts to every once in a while during the scene. The corpse baking in the sun. It's really disgusting. The scene then cuts to the sculptress once again, who must have been dreaming about the corpse. She looks horrible, pale, bruised, her eyes sunken in. She looks like a Skyrim vampire. She slowly opens her eyes and rubs her hands on her face, trying to massage the pain away. The vaginal crack in the ceiling now is disgustingly wide open, black mold dots around it. The sculptress wakes up and sits up. Her arms completely bruised black and blue now, some of her tattoos completely covered by it. She stumbles into her living room, leaning on the walls when she falls down. She has to force herself to get back up to the bathroom where she looks in the mirror. She grabs Advil or something and tries to open it, only to find there is only one pill left. She drops the bottle in the sink and swallows the last pill. She grabs her throat as if it hurt going down. She slowly goes to the kitchen sink to grab a glass of water, only to drop the glass and it cuts her hands. She then turns on the faucet and licks up the water like a dog. A knock on the door snaps her out of it as the sink fills up with blood. She confusedly looks at the sink, now filling up with brown liquid and maggots. She stumbles backward in fear when she slips on a piece of glass and falls backwards onto more glass. She lies on the ground with the glass and a pool of blood pouring out of her. The camera pans through that pool of blood as time passes. She wakes up with the pool of blood now dried. She grabs at her head, clearly in extreme pain. She gets up and feels around her head, now covered in blood. She gets up and looks around. She hobbles down her hallway, all covered in bruises. She slams her hand into the wall with blood all on her back. She messes around with her head and finds shards of glass in it. She grabs a bandage and tries to dress her wound as the door rings. She calls out for whoever it is to just come in. The friend who tried to seduce her in the kitchen comes in. He asks, "Where are you?" He comes in and looks at her, saying, "Oh my god, he has to help her. They have to go to the hospital." She says, "Let go, she can take care of herself." He says, "What the fuck? What are you talking about? Look at yourself in the mirror." She looks like death. He asks where that fucker of a boyfriend is, thinking that he did this to her. She says, "He's not here." She then asks, "Why is he here?" He says, "It doesn't matter. They have to go to a hospital." She falls down a bit and he catches her. She asks, is he sure he's not here for that? As she tries to kiss him. He recoils and says, "No." She says, "Then go. She can take care of herself." She stumbles again and then begins kissing her neck. He then lets her do this as he looks at her horribly bruised arms. She then makes her way down and begins to blow him, but he looks extremely uneasy. It goes on for an uncomfortably long time, but when he finishes, she vomits a combination of semen and bile. It's gross, and I'm not going to subject you to seeing that. She looks horrible, and he just zips himself up and leaves as she vomits more on the floor. Naked, bruised, and clearly very sick. She clears up into a fetal position and coughs and panics. She lies down on the floor and hyperventilates as that sad violin kicks back in yet again. She wakes up and struggles to get to her feet. You can now see intense bruises and streaks of blood all over her body, not just her arms and back now. All of her tattoos are completely covered by bruises. She has to force herself to her feet. She shambles slowly to the bathroom, groaning, clutching her head, and she cries. She pees down her back and then violently diarrheas down her back too. Obviously I cannot show this, but it is very realistic, let's say that. She moans and groans the entire time, clearly in extreme discomfort and disgust. We then get a really motion blurred thing again, but no sex is happening this time. It's very feverish, but it's of her just lying there. A loud screech plays when we see that things aren't quite discernible anymore. When a man with a face mask and doctor's clothes takes out a scalpel and begins to cut into her. As he does, she rocks back and forth, and the doctor moans as if he's having sex with her corpse. She cuts off a piece of her and throws it in the room with her boyfriend and that friend who just had sex with her, as they nakedly fight over a piece of meat of her. The imagery isn't exactly subtle. Then another red piece of cloth. The second act begins. Another is the title of this one. She wakes up and looks horrible. It must have been a nightmare. The bruises are now covering her body and her face. She's all covered in dirt and bile and blood, and we hear flies buzzing around her bloody bed. Her jaw cracks as she wakes up and sticks to the bed. She crawls on the ground, no longer able to stand up without assistance. She turns on the bathroom and scrubs herself down and screams when she realizes the bruises aren't coming off. Then she attempts to cover her face with makeup, but she ends up just looking like a clown. She screams in frustration and smashes the mirror, blood now dripping from the sides of her arms. She hyperventilates and pulls pieces of glass out of her black-colored arms. She undoes the bandage around her head and promptly vomits into it. Maggots fill her vomit as well as it drips on the floor. She pokes her head and the blood soaks out like a sponge when squeezed. She cries and slams the wall and goes back to bed. Her arms and breasts now have black, bloody lesions all over them. She shivers in her bed, with blood and muck all around her. The vaginal cracked ceiling now completely ripped open, and black mold covering it. She tries to get comfortable in her filth-covered bed, and then she starts scratching her private parts, to which black fluid leaks out. The next morning, she wakes up, and she has to grab her throat. Her voice is completely raspy, her chest now covered in maggots. Exposed wounds appear everywhere on her body. Maggots are on her pillow as well. Someone knocks at her door and she just lies there. She manages to get up, all covered in dark bruises and more maggots, and she shambles naked to the door. She sees her apartment is around 88 degrees. That's pretty hot. She then takes some tarps and lines the windows with them to block all of the sunlight coming in. Perhaps to make the house cooler, or perhaps just to sit in her filth in the darkness with the fever. She drops the hammer and it lands on her wounded foot, but she doesn't even seem to notice. She eventually does and goes to the bathroom to dress her wounds. They ooze with blood and pus. She fills up an ice cube tray from the freezer, and then she goes to the bathroom and sits in the tub and pours the ice cubes in. A cold bath must feel good. She more than likely has a fever from whatever this is. She sits there a while and falls asleep until she is awoken by, once again, her throat killing her. She gets out of the tub, now filled with blood and bodily decay, and she walks up to the sculpture she was working on and then works on it some more. Maybe to feel something. As she does, though, her little finger just falls off. She tries to stick it back on, but it sort of just sticks to the bandage. So she grabs a mason jar, fills it with alcohol, and as she tries to open the jar, another one of her fingers falls off, and then she feels something in her mouth and notices her teeth are falling out too. She then vomits some more and finds a maggot in her mouth. She takes a sip of alcohol and writes a note saying the date that her little finger fell off, and she puts it on the jar and then puts the little finger and alcohol in the jar, like almost to preserve her little finger and the date it fell off. She takes Polaroid pictures of her rotting body and hangs them almost like a disgusting art exhibit. She fills up 8 more mason jars to get ready for her other fingers to fall off. All of her nails are already gone, and she tries to glue them back on with just Elmer's glue, to no avail, obviously. So instead, she starts sewing her fingers back onto her hand with just pieces of thread. As she does, she touches her disgusting mutilated body and, well, masturbates. Her boyfriend, finally, comes over and sees the apartment. Blood and gore and pus line the walls, and he walks in and nearly vomits from the smell. He calls out, "Where are you?" He gets his phone out and begins to call 911, but the sculptress calls out, "No!" She touches herself as she grabs her boyfriend, telling her to touch her harder. But obviously the boyfriend is mortified at the sight and smell and touch of her. He punches the wall as she lies in the blood and mess in the bathroom. She chases him and he vomits on the ground after seeing her. He falls in his own vomit and she comes over to him and calls him a bastard. He calls out, "Fuck you, you crazy bitch, you're just a whore, you're not worth this." And she beats him to death with the hammer. Violently. All while interspersed is the montage of her touching herself, and when she climaxes, she finally kills her boyfriend. Good riddance. She gets off him and looks at his mangled face and hair and maggot-covered hammer. She covers his head with a tarp, and her arm sort of twists and almost falls off. So she has to take some duct tape and cover her gangrenous arm with it. She dabs away some of the filth on her face as she sits there with the maggots covering her skin. Her breath labored. She goes onto the ground and collects the blood and vomit and worms and hair and puts them all in mason jars. Not only this, she puts all of these pieces of body on the sculpture, making the sculpture of her boyfriend with his blood and vomit and hair. She then rips a piece of her own scalp off with hair and puts it in another mason jar. She looks at her arm, which is all black and decayed, and she takes some tweezers and begins picking pieces of maggots off of her flesh. She then hangs up another tarp on the wall, covered in blood and bodily fluids. She sits in a cold bath yet again and looks in the mirror that she broke. She rips off the duct tape. Her bones can be heard cracking as she does it. She then takes a needle and fiddles with her skin with the needle. Her eyes now completely white and blind. She doesn't even seem to feel the needle piercing her skin. We then get another weird motion blur segment, but it's completely incomprehensible. It looks just like the sculptress just standing there with soft grunting or moaning in the background. Then we see someone sawing a board in half. He's making a coffin. She goes over and feels up the coffin with her hand and gets in, lying down in it, accepting her fate. She grabs the lid and puts it over herself. We then get pictures of what looks like a face with no skin. No skin reference? And then it flashes back to her. She picks up her phone and she puts it back on the receiver and calls someone. We hear flies buzzing in the background. Then she says, "Can you come over, please?" And then we see the title of the final act, Oneself. The guy whom she blew, her friend, comes in and he says he came as fast as he could, but he covers his nose and mouth immediately, disgusted by the smell. He goes up, "Where are you?" He finds her in the bedroom, and we cannot even see her, just her black, decaying legs. She can only get 2 words out. Fuck me. He keeps saying they have to go to the hospital. She just keeps saying, fuck me. He says she's delirious. Give him her hand. She then tries, and he takes her arm, and the skin just slides right off of her. He leaves and vomits after this, and she follows him out of the room and says, "What, you don't find me attractive anymore? You don't want me to blow you like last time?" He says, "She needs to go to the fucking hospital." She says, "No. He's just a fucker. A fucking fucker." And yes, she says that. She keeps calling him a fucker. He says she's not herself, just go to the hospital with him. She says she thought he loved her, but no, she's just a cheap fuck, right? No one loves her. She grabs a kitchen knife and he falls down and she stabs him through the hand. She continues to stab his back over and over until he stops moving. She screams and screams even after he's dead, stabbing his dead body over and over, until the only thing left we hear is crying over his body with flies buzzing around. She then cries and puts her head on his back. She then goes to the bathroom and sits in the tub once again. Her breath sounds like phlegm and blood clogs her throat. All of her hair has now fallen out as she sits there. Her lips have also receded and gone and disappeared. She only has one good eye left, a literal living corpse. Maggots crawl on her hands as she tries to get out of the tub, her feet blackened and decayed. She walks to her apartment and puts bits of herself on the sculpture again. Pieces of hair, pieces of skin. The sculpture then falls down and breaks. She then screams in labored pain as she breaks all of the twisted artwork in her apartment. She then looks in the mirror. She no longer has a nose, and only one eye. Her entire skin wet and blackened with disease and death. She can hardly breathe. She then puts a finger in her eye and pops the one good eye, like the Mountain did to the Hound at the end of Game of Thrones. The Hound is also the best Game of Thrones character, by the way, don't at me. However, she doesn't even seem to feel her eyes pop. She just goes back to the bathtub, and she gets out with the rotting corpses festering in her wounds. She can no longer walk, and she crawls into the living room, where her dead boyfriend lay, decaying. Crawls past him, and we see her getting closer to something. In a pile of blood and bile. The flies getting louder as she does. She gets closer and closer to the camera. The fly is now the only thing we hear. She falls down, unable to crawl anymore, with a wet thwap. Her hand then decays and falls apart before our very eyes. Her body doing the same, bloated and falling apart. Pieces of skin fall off of her chest, exposing her ribs. She lifts her now skeletal hand and face, now little more than a skull. As her hand falls off, she screams. and then her jaw falls off, and she falls down. Dead. Finally. The last shot is of her completely skeletal remains, lying dead in the hallway, all alone. Wow, what a disgusting movie. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I am not sure I've ever consumed a piece of media that is quite as disgusting as this. The message is also scarily real. However, I had to take several breaks while watching this movie and while writing the script, and I've never had to do that, and I assume I'm going to have to take several breaks while editing as well. The movie is nauseating. I feel like there are 3 core themes to this film. Well, 2.5. However, I assume there are plenty more that I did not catch, and I want you to tell me what you got out of this film in the comments. But let's get into those disgusting themes of Thanatamorphose. The first theme I get that spoke to me the most is how lack of motivation, or even in a greater sense, depression, decays the mind, and in this case, the body. I've struggled with depression in my life, and I've had really hard times with it, and this movie nails it. And then it brings it up a few notches for good measure. When you have given up or lost all motivation, and things you once loved no longer seems to give you any emotion anymore, the feeling of stagnation, the feeling of decay and rot seeps in. The longer it goes on, the longer it rots the body from the inside out, which is one of the core themes of this movie, I believe. We see the sculptress, who is named Laura, by the way, although I'm not sure the name is ever said, go gradually from someone who sculpts and enjoys it at least slightly in the beginning of the movie, to someone who stagnates, begins to hate the world and not love anything anymore. She rots in her own body, and as her mind does, her body begins to catch up in this metaphorical sense of the movie, until it becomes too much and she falls apart in the end. She has nightmares and horrible things happen to her. People who are her friends and her partner begin to do horrible things to her, use her as a piece of meat instead of a person, which gets us into our second theme. The treatment of women in a large part of the world and society as a whole is really awful. The vaginal crack in the ceiling, at least to me as a man, seems to be implying that a lot of the time, women are seen as sex objects and not humans. Not always, obviously, but it happens a lot. Pieces of meat used for pleasure and reproduction. And then when they aren't young or beautiful anymore, they rot and are thrown away. Obviously a horrible notion that still happens even today. Very much so. Even if it's under a layer of fake compassion, a lot of the time, that is how women are seen to people. This last theme ties into the first theme, but it's a bit more distinct. We mentioned how when depressed and demotivated and burned out, sometimes we decay in our own bodies. At first, it might even just seem to be exhaustion, tiredness, but slowly that feeling corrodes until you have nothing at all. In this movie, the sculptress begins mutilating herself near the end, begins to have sex with a dude she probably doesn't even love, then kills both him and her boyfriend, just to feel something, anything. The desperation to just feel something, any emotion, is an extremely scary feeling when you can no longer feel anything. One I have felt before, and it becomes exacerbated horribly when what you're trying to do to feel emotion doesn't even work at all, when you can no longer feel anything. Overall, this movie really speaks to me, at least the depression and rotting part does. No movie has really grossed me out like this before. Hell, no piece of media really has other than cows, but this is way worse. But I want to hear what you think. What is the most disgusting movie you've ever heard? And is it this one? Or is there another one that I haven't covered, seen, or heard of? Is there even more disgusting, gross movies like this out there that you want me to cover? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all for liking and subscribing to this channel, as you are helping my dreams come true when you do that. I love you all so much, and I will see you next week with The Troop by Nick Cutter. Bye.